crystal vase flew through the air like a missile, shattering against the marble wall just inches from my head. Glass exploded everywhere, tiny pieces raining down on my uniform like dangerous snowflakes. "You worthless piece of trash," Victoria screamed, her beautiful face twisted with rage. Her perfectly manicured finger pointed at me like a weapon. "Do you have any idea how much that vase cost? More than your pathetic life is worth." I stood frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The entire mansion staff had gathered in the hallway, peeking from behind doorways, but no one dared to move. No one ever helped when Victoria was angry. They just watched with terrified eyes, grateful it wasn't them this time. But here's the thing that made this moment different from all the others. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. And for the first time since I'd arrived at the Sterling mansion 3 days ago, I looked Victoria Sterling straight in the eyes and smiled. That smile? It would change absolutely everything. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let me take you back to where this all started, just 5 days before that vase went flying. My name is Maya Torres, and I'm 19 years old. I'd been looking for work for months, any work, to help pay for my little brother's hospital bills. Tommy was only 7, and he needed an operation that cost more money than I'd ever seen in my whole life. I'd applied to dozens of jobs, but nobody wanted to hire a girl with no experience and no fancy education. I was about to give up when I saw a strange advertisement in the newspaper. Maid wanted Sterling Mansion. Must start immediately. High pay. No experience necessary. Discretion required. The pay they offered was triple what normal maids earned. Seemed too good to be true, but I was desperate. I called the number right away. A cold voice answered. "Sterling Residence. State your business." I'm calling about the maid position." My voice shook. There was a long pause. Then, "Can you start tomorrow?" "Yes," I almost shouted. "Yes, I can." "Good. Be here at 6 a.m. sharp. The address is 1847 Hillcrest Avenue. Do not be late. Mrs. Sterling hates lateness more than anything." The phone clicked dead before I could even say thank you. That night I could barely sleep. I kept thinking about Tommy in his hospital bed, about how this job could save him. I didn't care what kind of work it was. I'd scrub floors, clean toilets, anything. I just needed that money. I arrived at the Sterling Mansion at 5:45 a.m. the next morning. When I first saw it, my mouth fell open. It wasn't a house. It was a castle made of white stone and glass, with gardens so perfect they looked like paintings. A massive fountain stood in front, with golden dolphins spouting water into the air. I'd never seen anything so beautiful or so scary in my entire life. An old woman with gray hair pulled tight in a bun answered the door. Her face looked like it had forgotten how to smile years ago. "You must be the new girl," she said, looking me up and down like I was a bug. "I'm Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper. Follow me and don't touch anything." She led me through hallways filled with paintings that probably cost more than my entire neighborhood. Everything gleamed, the floors, the walls, even the air seemed to sparkle. "Listen carefully," Mrs. Henderson said, stopping suddenly and turning to face me. Her eyes were hard and serious. "There are rules in this house. Break them, and you'll be gone before you can blink." "Yes, ma'am," I whispered. "Rule 1. You do your work silently and invisibly. Mr. Sterling should never notice you exist. Rule 2. You never, ever go into the East Wing. That's Miss Victoria's personal area. Rule 3. If Miss Victoria speaks to you, you keep your eyes down and say, 'Yes, Miss Victoria,' or 'No, Miss Victoria.' Nothing else." Who is Miss Victoria?" I asked. Mrs. Henderson's face went pale. She looked around nervously, as if saying the name might summon a demon. "Miss Victoria Sterling is Mr. Sterling's fiancée," she whispered. "She's the most beautiful woman you'll ever see, and the most dangerous. In the 6 months she's been here, we've had 17 maids quit. 3 were hospitalized. 1 disappeared completely. My blood ran cold. Disappeared. Just be careful, child. Very, very careful. Victoria Sterling gets whatever she wants, and she wants everyone to fear her. And they do. Oh, they do. For the next 2 days, I cleaned rooms, polished silver, and stayed as invisible as possible. I caught glimpses of Mr. Sterling, a tall, handsome man in expensive suits who always looked sad, even when he smiled. He never spoke to any of the staff. But I didn't see Victoria. Not until the 3rd day. I was cleaning the main staircase when I heard the click of high heels on marble. I looked up and there she was. Victoria Sterling was the most stunning person I'd ever seen. She had long golden hair that flowed like silk, perfect skin, and eyes so blue they looked like pieces of sky. She wore a white dress that probably cost more than a car, and diamonds sparkled at her throat and wrists. But there was something wrong with her beauty, something cold, like a poisonous flower, gorgeous but deadly. She stopped on the stairs, looking down at me the way a queen might look at a servant. No, the way a cat looks at a mouse before it pounces. "You're new," she said. Her voice was sweet like honey, but honey mixed with poison. I remembered Mrs. Henderson's warning. "Yes, Miss Victoria. Look at me when I speak to you." I raised my eyes to meet hers, and immediately wished I hadn't. Her smile was cruel. "What's your name, little maid?" "Maya, Miss Victoria." "Maya," she repeated, tasting my name like it was something rotten. "Well, Maya, let me make something very clear. This is MY house. These are MY servants. My fiancé may own this mansion, but I own everything in it, including you. Do you understand?" "Yes, Miss Victoria." "Good." She started to walk past me, then stopped. "Oh, and Maya, I'm going to be watching you very carefully. I always know when someone doesn't belong. And you." She leaned close, so close I could smell her expensive perfume. "You don't belong here at all." Then she laughed. A high, tinkling laugh that made my skin crawl, and continued down the stairs. I stood there, shaking, until Mrs. Henderson found me. "She spoke to you?" the old woman said, her face full of pity. "Poor child. Now you're on her radar. Be very, very careful from now on." But I couldn't be careful enough. The next morning, Victoria called me to her private sitting room. My hands trembled as I knocked on the door. "Enter." Her voice sang out. I walked into a room that looked like it belonged to a princess from a fairy tale. All silk and gold and flowers. Victoria sat on a white sofa, drinking tea from a delicate cup. "I need you to clean my bedroom," she said, not looking at me. "It's the door at the end of the hall. And Maya, I want it perfect. Not a single speck of dust. Not a single thing out of place. If I find even one tiny mistake." She smiled that terrible smile. "Well, let's just say the last maid who disappointed me had a very unfortunate accident." My stomach twisted, but I nodded. "Yes, Miss Victoria. I spent 3 hours cleaning that bedroom. I dusted every surface twice. I made the bed so perfectly that the corners were exact triangles. I organized her makeup, her jewelry, her clothes. Everything was immaculate. When I finished, I stood back and smiled. It was perfect. She couldn't possibly find anything wrong. I was so wrong. Victoria walked in an hour later. She didn't even look at the room. Instead, she walked straight to her dresser, picked up a priceless crystal vase filled with white roses, and threw it directly at my head. That's when we came back to the beginning of our story, with glass exploding around me, staff watching in horror, and Victoria screaming. But here's what no one expected, including Victoria herself. Instead of crying or apologizing or running away like every other maid had done, I bent down calmly and picked up one of the broken pieces of crystal. I held it up to the light, watching it sparkle. "That's a shame," I said quietly, my voice steady. "It really was beautiful." Victoria's face turned from red with anger to white with shock. What did you just say?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something I don't think anyone else had ever noticed. Behind all that beauty and cruelty, Victoria Sterling was terrified. And in that moment, standing in a pool of broken glass with everyone watching, I made a decision that would change everything. I smiled at her. Not a scared smile. Not a fake smile. A real, genuine smile. I said, "It was beautiful, Miss Victoria. just like you. But you know what I've learned? Beautiful things are often the most fragile. They break so easily when they're handled the wrong way. The hallway went absolutely silent. Victoria's perfect face froze. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. No one had ever spoken to her like this. And that's when Mr. Sterling himself appeared at the end of the hallway, his eyes wide with shock, having heard every single word. Mr. Alexander Sterling stood at the end of the hallway like a statue carved from ice. He was even more handsome up close than from a distance. Tall and strong with dark hair touched with gray at the sides, and eyes the color of storm clouds. But right now, those eyes were focused entirely on me. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Victoria recovered first. Her face transformed in an instant, the cruel mask melting away, replaced by the face of a sweet, innocent angel. Tears actually appeared in her beautiful blue eyes. "Alexander, thank goodness you're here." She rushed toward him, her voice trembling. This girl was stealing from me. I caught her trying to take my grandmother's vase, and when I confronted her, she threw it at the wall and said the most horrible things. My heart stopped. She was lying. She was standing there, looking like a wounded princess, and telling complete lies. The other servants looked at the floor. Not one of them would meet my eyes. They'd all seen what really happened, but they were too scared to speak. I understood they had families to feed, bills to pay. They couldn't risk their jobs for a new girl they barely knew. I was alone. Mr. Sterling's cold eyes moved from Victoria to me. Is this true? I could have lied. I could have apologized and begged for forgiveness. That's what Victoria expected. That's what everyone expected. But I thought about Tommy in his hospital bed. I thought about how I'd spent my whole life watching people like Victoria get away with hurting people like me. And something inside me just broke. "No, sir," I said clearly. "That's not what happened at all." Victoria's eyes flashed with rage for just a second before the sweet mask returned. "She's lying, Alexander. She's just trying to save her job." "Miss Victoria threw the vase at me," I continued, looking straight at Mr. Sterling. "I cleaned her room exactly as she asked. When she came to inspect it, she didn't even look. She just threw the vase and started screaming." "You little—" Victoria started, but Mr. Sterling held up his hand. "Silence." That one word cut through the air like a knife. Victoria's mouth snapped shut, though her eyes burned with fury. Mr. Sterling studied my face for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Maya Torres, sir." "How long have you worked here, Maya Torres?" 3 days, sir." "And in those 3 days, how many items have you broken?" "None, sir." "How many complaints have been filed against you?" "None, sir. At least not before today." He nodded slowly, then turned to Mrs. Henderson, who stood frozen by the wall. "Mrs. Henderson, in your professional opinion, is Maya Torres a thief?" The old housekeeper's eyes went wide. She looked at Victoria, then at me, then back at Mr. Sterling. I could see her struggling. Tell the truth and face Victoria's wrath, or lie and keep her job safe. She started, her voice shaking. "No, sir. Maya is not a thief. She's been nothing but hardworking and honest." I wanted to cry with relief. She'd risked everything to tell the truth. Victoria's face turned bright red. Mrs. Henderson is clearly confused. "She's old and—" "Mrs. Henderson has worked for my family for 30 years, Mr. Sterling said coldly. "Her judgment has never failed me. Not once." He looked around at the other servants. "Did anyone else witness what happened here?" Slowly, terribly slowly, a young servant boy named Peter raised his hand. He couldn't have been more than 16, and he was shaking like a leaf. I saw it, sir," he whispered. "Miss Victoria threw the vase. Maya didn't do anything wrong." Another maid stepped forward. Then another. One by one, 5 servants confirmed my story. I watched Victoria's perfect face crack. The sweet angel disappeared completely, replaced by something dark and twisted. "They're all lying," she shrieked. "They're protecting her because she's one of them." You're going to believe servants over me? Over your effant? Mr. Sterling's expression didn't change. I believe the truth, Victoria, regardless of who speaks it. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Maya, Mr. Sterling said, turning to me, go to the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson will give you a new assignment. You're no longer working in the main house. My heart sank. So he was firing me after all, just doing it more politely than Victoria would have. But then he added, you'll be working as my personal assistant instead. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 8. The hallway exploded with gasps. Victoria's face went from red to purple to white in the space of 3 seconds. What? She screamed. Alexander, you can't be serious. She's just a maid. She's honest, he said simply. And in this house, that seems to be a rare quality. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. He turned and walked away, leaving Victoria standing in the hallway surrounded by broken glass, shaking with rage. As I passed her to follow Mrs. Henderson to the kitchen, she leaned close and whispered so only I could hear. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, little maid. I'm going to destroy you. The sweet smile returned to her face. Slowly, that night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tiny room in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling and wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Personal assistant to Alexander Sterling? I didn't even know what that meant. I had no training, no education. Why would he choose me? And Victoria's threat kept echoing in my mind. I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone. She wouldn't forgive that. She'd find a way to get revenge. But when I thought about giving up, I pictured Tommy's face, and I knew I had to stay. I had to survive whatever Victoria threw at me, because my little brother's life depended on it. The next morning, I put on my cleanest dress and arrived at Mr. Sterling's office at exactly 8 o'clock. My hands were sweating as I knocked on the heavy wooden door. Enter. The office was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Mr. Sterling sat behind a massive desk covered in papers and computer screens. He looked up when I entered, and for the first time, I saw something other than coldness in his eyes. He looked tired, deeply, terribly tired. Sit, he said, pointing to a chair across from his desk. I sat, keeping my back straight and my hands folded in my lap like my mother had taught me. I suppose you're wondering why I hired you as my assistant, he said. Yes, sir. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. How old are you, Maya? 19, sir. And why did you take a job as a maid? A girl your age should be in college or training for a career. I hesitated. I didn't want to tell him about Tommy, about my problems. But something about his tired eyes made me feel like he'd understand. My little brother is sick, I said quietly. He needs an operation that costs a lot of money. I couldn't afford college. I needed work, any work that paid well. Mr. Sterling nodded slowly. What's wrong with your brother? A heart condition, sir. If he doesn't get the surgery soon. I couldn't finish the sentence. I see. He was quiet for a moment, then stood up and walked to the window. I'm going to tell you something, Maya. Something I've never told anyone in this house. My heart started beating faster. I don't love Victoria, he said. His voice so quiet I almost couldn't hear it. I never have. Our engagement was arranged by our families. A business merger disguised as a romance. 6 months ago, I agreed to it because I was tired of fighting. Tired of being alone. I thought maybe I could learn to care for her. He turned to face me, and the sadness in his eyes was overwhelming. But Victoria, she's not who she pretends to be. The sweet, beautiful woman she shows the world is a mask. Underneath, she's cruel and manipulative. I've watched her torment my staff, destroy people's lives for fun, and lie about it all with a smile on her face. Then why don't you end the engagement, sir? I asked before I could stop myself. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Because Victoria's father owns 40% of my company. If I break the engagement, he'll destroy everything my family built over 3 generations. He'll ruin me, bankrupt the company, and put 5,000 people out of work. I'm trapped, Maya. Completely trapped. I understood then. Mr. Sterling wasn't cold or mean. He was a prisoner in his own mansion, forced to marry a woman he couldn't stand, and powerless to stop it. Yesterday, when you stood up to Victoria, he continued, you did something I haven't been able to do in 6 months. You told the truth. You didn't let her beauty or her threats scare you into silence. He walked back to his desk and pulled out a folder. This is why I hired you as my assistant. I need someone I can trust. Someone who won't be bought or frightened by Victoria. Someone honest. He looked at me seriously. Can you be that person, Maya? I thought about Victoria's threat. I thought about how dangerous this could be. But then I thought about Tommy. Yes, sir, I said. I can. Good. Then let's get started. Your first task is to... The office door burst open with a crash. Victoria stood in the doorway, her face twisted with fury. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a man I'd never seen before. Tall and thin, with slicked back hair and cold eyes like a snake. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Alexander, Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. We need to talk. My father's lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, has some concerns about your recent personnel decisions. Mr. Sterling's jaw tightened. This is a private office, Victoria. You can't just... Oh, but I can, darling, she purred, walking in and sitting on the edge of his desk like she owned it. Because according to our engagement contract, I have a say in all household matters, including who you hire. Mr. Blackwood opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Mr. Sterling, he said in a voice like oil, my client has informed me that you've promoted an unqualified servant to a position of trust without proper background checks or approval. This violates Section 12, Paragraph 7 of your engagement agreement. My blood ran cold. There was a contract that gave Victoria control over Mr. Sterling's hiring decisions? Furthermore, Mr. Blackwood continued, Miss Sterling has concerns about this particular employee's character and intentions. She believes, quite reasonably, that this girl may be attempting to seduce you in order to improve her position. What? I jumped to my feet. That's insane. I would never. Sit down, Maya, Mr. Sterling said quietly, but I could hear the anger in his voice. Victoria smiled at me, and in that smile I saw pure evil. It's nothing personal, sweetie, she said. I just need to protect my fiancé from ambitious little gold diggers. I'm sure you understand. This is ridiculous, Victoria, Mr. Sterling said. Maya is my employee, nothing more. Then you won't mind if she signs this. Mr. Blackwood slid a paper across the desk toward me. I picked it up, trying to read it, but it was full of legal words I didn't understand. It's a simple non-disclosure agreement, Victoria explained, her voice sweet as poison. It just says that you won't talk about anything you see or hear in this house, and that you'll maintain a professional distance from my fiancé at all times. Oh, and if you break these rules, she smiled wider, you'll owe us $1 million in damages. $1 million. I made minimum wage. That amount of money might as well have been $1 billion. This is a trap, Mr. Sterling said. Maya, don't sign that. It's designed to. If she doesn't sign it, Victoria interrupted. Then according to our contract, you have to fire her immediately, and any other servant who refuses to sign. In fact, I think we should have all the servants sign it, just to be safe. My hands shook as I held the paper. If I didn't sign it, I'd lose my job and Tommy would lose his chance at the surgery. But if I did sign it, Victoria could use it to control me, to silence me, to destroy me whenever she wanted. You have 10 seconds to decide, Mr. Blackwood said, clicking open a pen. 1, 2, 3. I looked at Mr. Sterling. His face was full of anger and helplessness. He couldn't protect me, not without destroying his company and hurting thousands of people. 4, 5, 6. I thought about Tommy's smile, about how he always told me I was brave, even when I didn't feel brave at all. 7, 8. I picked up the pen. Maya, no, Mr. Sterling started, but I wasn't going to sign it. Instead, I did something that made Victoria's smile disappear completely. I tore the paper in half, then in half again, and again, until it was just tiny pieces scattered across Mr. Sterling's desk like snow. I don't sign contracts I don't understand, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. And I don't let bullies tell me what to do. The room went absolutely silent. Victoria's face transformed into something terrifying. Her beautiful features twisted with rage so pure it was almost inhuman. "You stupid, stupid little girl," she whispered. "You have no idea what you've just done." She turned to Mr. Sterling, and her voice became cold and sharp as ice. "Fine. You want to keep your little maid? Keep her. But remember, Alexander, our wedding is in 3 months. 3 months. And when I become Mrs. Sterling, the first thing I'm going to do is fire every single person in this house who dared to defy me. Starting with her." She stormed out, Mr. Blackwood following behind her like a shadow. When they were gone, Mr. Sterling sank into his chair, his face in his hands. "I'm sorry, sir," I said quietly. "I didn't mean to make things worse." He looked up at me, and to my surprise, he was almost smiling. "You didn't make things worse, Maya. You just declared war. And Victoria," he shook his head. "Victoria doesn't lose wars. She destroys her enemies completely. Then what do we do?" Mr. Sterling stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the gardens where Victoria was probably planning her revenge right now. "We fight back," he said quietly. "But to do that, I need to tell you the real truth. The truth about who Victoria really is, and what she's really after." He turned to face me, and his eyes were full of secrets. "Victoria isn't just cruel, Maya. She's dangerous. 6 months ago, my younger sister was supposed to marry me. But 3 weeks before the wedding, she disappeared. The police called it a runaway case, but I know better. I know Victoria had something to do with it, but I can never prove it." My blood turned to ice. "Your sister disappeared? Vanished without a trace." And 2 weeks later, Victoria's father appeared with a new marriage contract and threats about destroying my company if I didn't agree. I've been trying to find my sister ever since, trying to find proof of what Victoria did. But he stopped suddenly, his eyes going wide. "Sir? What is it?" "The East Wing," he whispered. "Victoria's private rooms. She never lets anyone in there. Never. Not even the cleaning staff. What if?" The realization hit both of us at the same time. "What if your sister is there?" I breathed. "What if she's been there this whole time?" Mr. Sterling grabbed my shoulders, his eyes blazing with sudden hope. "Maya, I need you to do something incredibly dangerous. Something that could get you killed if Victoria finds out." "What?" He leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. "I need you to get into the East Wing. I need you to find out what Victoria is hiding. And if my sister is there." His voice broke. "Please, please find her and bring her home." Before I could answer, before I could even process what he was asking, we heard it. A scream. A terrible, blood-chilling scream that came from somewhere deep in the mansion. And it sounded exactly like a young woman calling for help. The scream echoed through the mansion again, and Mr. Sterling's face went pale as snow. "That's coming from the East Wing," he whispered. Without another word, he ran from the office and I followed right behind him. We raced through hallways and upstairs until we reached a locked door, the entrance to Victoria's private area. Mr. Sterling pulled out a master key with shaking hands. "I should have done this months ago," he said, his voice filled with regret. The door swung open, and what we saw made my heart stop. The East Wing wasn't fancy like the rest of the mansion. It was dark and cold, with bare walls and locked doors lining both sides of a long hallway. It looked like a prison. Another scream came from the room at the end of the hall. We ran toward it. Mr. Sterling kicked the door open, and there, chained to a bed in a tiny, dirty room, was a young woman. She had the same dark hair as Mr. Sterling, the same storm-gray eyes. His sister, Sarah. Mr. Sterling rushed to her, working frantically to unlock the chains. But before he could free her, Victoria appeared in the doorway like a beautiful demon. In her hand, she held a gun. Well, she said, smiling that terrible smile. I was wondering when you'd finally figure it out, Alexander. Took you long enough. You monster, Mr. Sterling breathed. You kept her here for 6 months? Chained like an animal? Victoria laughed. Of course I did. Sarah was going to marry you and ruin everything. My father and I had plans, big plans. We were going to marry, merge our companies, and then... Well, accidents happen to billionaire husbands all the time, don't they? She pointed the gun at Mr. Sterling's chest. You were supposed to marry me, love me, trust me. Then one day you'd have a tragic fall down the stairs, and I'd inherit everything. But you just had to hire this nosy little maid. My mind raced. I had to do something. But what? Victoria had a gun, and she was clearly insane. Then I remembered something Mrs. Henderson had said on my first day. I always know when someone doesn't belong. And suddenly I understood. Victoria had said those exact same words to me. Because Mrs. Henderson had said them to Victoria first. Which meant, you're not really engaged, are you? I said suddenly. The engagement contract, the threats about destroying the company. It's all fake. Victoria's smile faltered for just a second. But that second was enough. Mrs. Henderson told me she's worked here for 30 years. I continued, talking fast. She would know if there was a real engagement contract. Mr. Blackwood isn't your father's lawyer. He's just an actor you hired to scare us. Mr. Sterling's eyes widened with understanding. The contract I signed, I never actually read it because your father threatened me. But there was never any real legal binding, was there? You've been bluffing this entire time. Victoria's face twisted with rage. Shut up. Shut up. It doesn't matter now. I have the gun, and you're all going to. But she never finished her sentence. Mrs. Henderson appeared behind Victoria and hit her over the head with a heavy vase. Victoria crumpled to the floor, the gun sliding across the room. I told you, the old housekeeper said calmly. I always know when someone doesn't belong. And you, Miss Victoria, never belonged in this house. The police arrived within minutes. It turned out Mrs. Henderson had been suspicious of Victoria from the beginning and had been gathering evidence for months. Victoria and her father were arrested for kidnapping, fraud, and attempted murder. Sarah was rushed to the hospital but would be okay. The doctors said she'd been drugged to keep her weak, but she'd recover fully. 2 weeks later, Mr. Sterling called me to his office again. Maya, he said. And for the first time since I'd met him, he was smiling, really smiling. My sister is home safe. My company is secure. And I owe it all to you. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for enough money to pay for Tommy's surgery 3 times over. I can't accept this, I whispered, tears filling my eyes. You already earned it, he said gently. You saved my sister's life. You exposed Victoria's lies. And you taught me something important, that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. I started crying then, thinking about Tommy getting his surgery, about how everything had changed because I decided to stand up to a bully. There's one more thing, Mr. Sterling said. I'd like you to stay on as my assistant. The real kind this time, with proper training, a good salary, and a chance to build a real career. What do you say? I didn't even have to think about it. Yes, sir. Absolutely yes. 6 months later, Tommy had his surgery and recovered perfectly. I was working as Mr. Sterling's executive assistant and taking business classes at night. Sarah had become one of my best friends. And Victoria? She was in prison, where her beauty and her lies couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Everyone had feared the billionaire's fiancée, until the new Maid changed everything. But the truth is, I didn't change everything by being special or smart or brave. I changed everything by simply refusing to be afraid. And sometimes that's all it takes. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. Remember, you're braver than you think, and you can change your world too. See you in the next story.